All right, so it says we have asked everyone and they've all agreed. It says, let's see, and if everyone agreed to be recorded, transcribed, I think we're there. Okay, so let me begin by sharing the screen. And if you have questions, just raise your hand or put it in the chat. Charlotte will interrupt me if I get too long-winded and don't break for a question. Please let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, Andre.
So this is the email inviting you to this series, to this series of webinars. We covered property and auto application worksheets on the 2nd, the 9th, the occurrence, liability, and cyber. Today, we're going to talk about the claims made and workers' compensation. Again, we're attempting to record it, and we will provide it to Will to be posted on the TAC website. We've not successfully done that yet, but we're determined to make it happen. And again, we have another webinar on the 23rd, another one on the 30th, where we can cover any of the information that has been covered before. Certainly the other two application webinar sessions, if enough people are asking for that. Please don't hesitate to request that. Again, you can contact us directly for one-on-one help. If you're in the Northwest or Northeast districts, please reach out to Gilbert. His contact information is there. If you're in the Southwest or Southeast, reach out to me. And in the Metro District, please reach out to Braxton. Braxton and his folks were, like many of you, affected by the hurricane, the storm that came through. So if he was not as quick to respond, please don't hesitate to call either Gilbert or me, or if you can't get a hold of me, try Gilbert or Braxton and vice versa. Any one of us should be able to help you. We've simply assigned our names to individual districts so that we can sort of spread out the resource. I'm going to call to your attention. This went out in an email. We have found some errors, and we apologize in the workbooks. In the claims made workbook, for example, that we're going to be talking about today, there are some questions on the application that are not fully visible because of what we believe is a wrap error on the Excel spreadsheet. And what's interesting is that not everyone is experiencing the same error, and where the errors do exist, not everyone has the same set of errors. So what we have done is identified all of the questions that someone who has either internally or from one of the churches has identified as a question that's not visible. We have printed out the full question for each of those, and here are the ones from the claims made tab. It's only in the claims made workbook and in the occurrence workbook. This should have gone out to everyone who's received the applications. If you've not received this, and again, we apologize for the inconvenience. If you get to a question that you cannot see the entire question, please use this as a reference. And if it's not on this list, send one of us an email and we'll get you the full question. This is the email that went out from Will Reed. This one happened to go to these addressees, but it should look the same for everyone. There's an explanation. There's a listing of the workbooks and the applications in each of the workbooks. Today, again, we're talking about the claims made liability applications workbook. And these are the various pieces that are in there. You'll see there's also an occurrence liability applications workbook. We've talked about this before, but the difference and the reason we've separated these two is that almost all of these in the claims made liability applications workbook are for what's typically called claims made coverage. We usually think of insurance on an occurrence basis. Your personal auto policy will pay for claims that arise out of occurrences that take place during the policy period. If you get a policy on February 1 of 2024 and it runs for a year until February 1 of 2025, and let's say that you are in an accident and it's your fault in July, so that your insurance company has to pay for bodily injury and property damage to someone, the policy is going to pay for the occurrence that happened during the policy period. Your property insurance is like that. Auto insurance is like that. Some of the occurrence, the occurrence liability is like that. Workers' compensation is like that. But when you get to professional liability, directors and officers, sexual misconduct liability, those are what are called claims made policies. They pay for claims that are made during the policy period, even though the occurrence which led to the claim may have taken place before the policy became effective. So it pays for claims made during the policy. Now, there's usually a backstop, a date before which no occurrences would be covered. Your policy may pay for claims made based on occurrences that go back 5 years or 10 years. But every policy is going to have, every claims made policy is going to have what's called a retroactive date. And that marks the earliest date, the backstop date for occurrences that might be paid on an existing claims made policy. Now, that's a lot. I hope you got that. Let me just pause there and see if anybody has a question. Again, it's the difference between an occurrence policy and a claims made policy. We're talking about claims made policies today.
Andre, we have no questions in the chat and no hand raises.
Okay, thank you. So step one, what we would ask you to do from this email is to take the application, and here's the one we're working on today, open it. You'll need to click the enable editing here, or at least I do on my machine. And here it is, it's open. Now, if you look at the top, this is the file with the file name as it would have come to you from Will. What we ask you to do is to, before you fill it out, save it to a file name that references your, and let me find a place on my computer to save it here, just a second. So I'm going to save it in my Texas Annual Conference working file. And what we ask you to do is leave this claims made part of the name, but replace it with either ME for Metro, SE for Southeast, NW for Northwest, etc. We want to see two letters for your district and then the town. So let's say it's St. James in Beaumont. We would say Southeast, Beaumont, STJAMES, claims made. So today we're going to act like we're filling this out for St. James, and I'm not sure there is a St. James in Beaumont, but that gives you the idea. I'll bounce back to the instructions here briefly. So you'll see the information. Step one, it describes what I just did. And then down here at the bottom, you'll see some examples of names. Metro, First Church of Houston. So for each of the application files that you are going to fill out, we ask you to first save it under a name that reflects your district, your town, and your church. So, oh, there it is, Southeast, Beaumont, St. James. I thought I remembered that. So there are some examples of that, and that would go for any of these application workbooks that we might be working on. So there are several tabs along the bottom, and for those of you that are somewhat familiar but not completely familiar with Excel, you can access the various tabs for the various parts of this application. The beginning should have instructions for you. We'll be talking about several of these things. The first tab that we've got available here or to fill out is the counselor's liability tab, and we'll just go through that briefly. First thing is the church name. It's a little odd the way it's set up here, but it works, and we appreciate you your patience with us on this. So let's say this is St. James, UMC, Beaumont, or whatever the name is. It's in Beaumont. Or it's on Main Street, whatever the street is, 1, 2, 3, Main, Beaumont. Everybody's in Texas, 77045 or whatever the zip code is. We'll ask you to put in the church website, the contact name. Who should we or the underwriters contact if we have questions about what has been provided here? So John Doe's phone number, and John Doe's email address. Okay. And then if you should, most churches will already have counselor's liability insurance and our professional liability insurance. Here we're the application, and let me just back up and say again, some of you have heard this before, I'm sure, but what you have here are some applications that we've put together based on the applications that the church insurance underwriters have put together. If you filled out a church insurance application in the past, you know that they're quite lengthy and detailed. We are going to be approaching, on behalf of the conference and on behalf of the participating churches in the conference, several insurance companies, rather than ask you to fill out in applications for each of the insurance companies that we plan to approach. We've collected their applications, we've compiled them, we've tried to whittle out all of the duplicates, and we have put them into this Excel format so that a lot of different applications from different churches can be compiled into a single application that the conference will then, it will represent the conference and those churches in the conference that are participating in this effort. And underwriters will be quoting a single policy based on this single application or single set of applications for the policy. And so that's what you have here. We put these together again based on individual insurance company applications. You will, I'll tell you right now, you will find some errors in here. We apologize. If it's not obvious how to work around the error that you find, let us know. If you have a question that you come across that doesn't apply, sometimes not applicable is a choice. If it doesn't apply and that's not a choice, just leave it as blank or select. We'll talk about that in a minute. So in this case, this application is asking for the limits that are requested. Well, I'll tell you that most insurance policies for churches are going to have either $500,000 or $1 million, 3 million limits. The easiest way to answer this question, and a lot of questions actually, is to look at the policies that you currently have for your church and or the applications that were created by your agent in order to obtain the insurance that you have now. You should have copies of those applications as well as the policies. If you don't, all agents, well, I'm sure all agents nowadays are able to provide that to you in an electronic format. I would suggest go to see what limits you have now. The fact is that for the conference, we are going to be buying or attempting to buy a single large limit that can be used for any and or all of the churches. And so we'll be buying significantly higher limits or looking at significantly higher limits than probably any individual church is carrying on its own now. But again, please check the policy that you have in place. And then there's going to be a series of questions, are the counselors that are at your church. You have clergy who provide counseling and possibly other than clergy. Is there a fee? How many of them are there? Are they licensed? Those are these questions. Then there's other detailed about have any of these had licenses revoked, suspended, refused. If you don't have that information, if you don't know that information, put whatever you can in these explanation boxes. But most of these are simply yes, no questions. So you can click on the box and select yes or no. In all of these applications, the color coding is that the blue represents the fields to be filled out or completed. The gray should be locked. You shouldn't need to or have an opportunity to get in there. And then you'll see sometimes there's a request for additional information to support what the answers may have been. There are no questions there. I'm going to move on to the crime. So crime is another part of the coverage. We should have already carried over the information about the basic information about your church, your location, your contact that we entered on the prior worksheet. Proposed additional insurance other than the applicant. So are there any additional entities for which coverage is requested? Well, an individual church should probably list the conference, but in the case of the conference, we're going to be asking the insurance underwriters to name all of the participating churches. So we'll be providing this information. But if your church happens to have some entity other than the church that is insured on your current insurance policy, that information should go in here.
Andre.
Yes.
Andre. Oh.
Yes.
Andre, Thomas is stating that he cannot edit the information above the questions on any of the forms where the church name is, etc. However, he was able to edit 2 weeks ago. I don't know if you or
Okay.
Gilbert want to address that one.
Let me ask this. So, Thomas, please unmute yourself. And are you on the crime tab?
I opened about 3 or 4 different tabs, including the tab, the property tab that I worked on 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
And none of the boxes are blue anymore. They're all gray for me and uneditable.
Okay. So can you see my screen, Thomas?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm on this claims made form and I'm on the crime tab and it's all grayed out for me, right?
Oh.
It's grayed out for me, but if you go back to the counselor's liability tab, this is where we typed in the information and it just carries over to the crime tab, to the D&O tab and the employer and practices tab. So I suspect whichever workbook you're looking at, you might just be on a tab that that
was
is
it.
pre-filled.
That was it. Thank you.
Oh, okay, great.
And Andre, before we continue, I want to make sure that that Joe with Edom UMC did see Gilbert's answer in the chat. Joe, if you can just let us know if you did indeed see Gilbert's answer, that would be great. Or his response. Okay, Andre, I think you can continue for now.
Okay, so I will.
Oh, hold on, Andre. Joe is currently typing.
Okay.
Okay, we're good to go.
All right, very good. And so a lot of these, I won't go through everything here, but just want to make sure you see it, you understand that, you should be able to get to the blue and answer yes, no. This is employee location exposures. We're on the crime. It's about your banking and your money handling practices, those kinds of things. What kind of computers, do you have wire transfers? Some of this doesn't apply. If it doesn't, you can either, for example, if this is not applicable to you, but we are only giving you a yes, no opportunity here, then just leave it as select and move on. Do you have a fraud policy? Do you have some of these other things, your physical controls, hiring practices? Do you use pre-employment verification, drug testing? And listen, if you don't do drug testing, just put no. What I suspected for churches, the underwriters are probably not going to be very concerned about drug testing. And what we expect when we compile these for the underwriters is that we will show all of the churches that participated. And for the conference, for example, this series of questions is going to show of the churches that are participating, what percentage had this feature, did not have this feature. Some will, some won't. And if it gives the underwriter, if anything that we don't have that they ask about gives the underwriter heartburn, they will let us know and we'll come back and see if one of these things might be easily implemented to appease the underwriters. Just sort of a tangent piece of information there. Some of these things, do you keep precious metals and gemstones? It'd be pretty easy to skip through and answer these. So that's crime. And then directors and officers liability. So does your church currently have D&O? Let's say it's a yes. Is your current policy type occurrence or claims made? So it should be claims made. If it's occurrence, that's going to create a special administrative issue for us, which we can certainly handle, but it's very important that we know that you currently have an occurrence policy rather than a claims made. And then here is where you would put in that backstop date. On the face of your directors and officers policy, or on your package policy, if directors and officers is a piece of a package policy that offers several different coverages in one package, on that declarations page, there should be a retroactive date stated there. And so that's what we want here. And that's going to be common for some of these other claims made policies. They're going to be asking for the assets of the church, revenue, information from your financial statements, information about your financial statements, information about your board of trustees, directors and officers, and then claims made information. Are there any claims or lawsuits pending against your organization? Well, I'll tell you, in a claims made situation, well, the answer might be no. Let's say it's no. If yes, have all such pending claims been reported to the prior carrier? So this is a common question for claims made policy. If you or someone in the leadership of your church is aware of an issue that could lead to a claim for the directors and officers insurance, employment practices like discrimination, harassment, wrongful termination, sexual misconduct, if there's any incident that you or the leadership of the church is aware of that could lead to someone making a claim against the church in this prospective policy period, that's something that you really need to report to the existing insurance carrier, because the underwriter who is looking at your prospective coverage does not intend to pick up claims that have already been known. Those should be reported to the existing insurance carrier or the insurance carrier that had your coverage at the time that the claim was made.
Andre?
Yes.
We have a question from Sydney. Could you please repeat what we are to do if our D&O policy is occurrence, not claims made?
First thing you do is, if it's a occurrence, you're going to put, let's say, you're going to click here. In question 2, this is on line 17. The options are occurrence and claims made. You would select occurrence right here. That's going to flag for us the questions and the information we're going to need to make sure that the coverage, that there's no gaps in coverage and no duplications in coverage for your church. We would expect it's going to be claims made, but if it's occurrence, make sure you mark it here and we'll catch it. Okay. And then another question, are there any incidents or circumstances known to your organization that may give rise to a future claim under the proposed coverage? Again, if there is, you need to disclose that here, but you should also make sure you report it to the insurance company that you have in place, or that it has been reported to the insurance company that was in place when the claim was made. Underwriters are also interested in the details of that prior coverage, because if there is a claim that should have been reported, the underwriters are going to want to know which policies those claims would have been attached to. So that's what this area is looking for. All right, I'm going to move on to employment practices. Again, this is typically wrongful termination, discrimination, harassment, and again, a series of questions. We ask you to fill out what's in the blue. Does your church have an employment practices liability coverage now? Same situation we just talked about. Is it occurrence or claims made? What's the retroactive date? How many employees, including full-time, part-time, temporary, and seasonal, do you have? That is a duplicate question. You're going to find that question on the work comp application. You're going to find it on at least one other application, and we apologize for that duplication. Voluntary, what they're looking for here is how many people have been terminated, what kind of turnover have you had? How many employees do you have? How many have turned over? I wouldn't include a reassignment of a clergy member in turnover. This is really about other folks, non-clergy, that are employed, coming and going from the employment of the church. And then there'll be questions: have there been any claims or administrative procedures, demands related to employment practices in the last 5 years? Several other questions about your policies, grievance policies, hiring practices, etc. And then again, questions about any incidents that might give rise to a claim in the future. Next, I'm going to move to fiduciary liability. This is liability associated with the holding and managing of funds that don't all belong to the church. Typically, this is for like your 401k funds. Those might be managed by someone on the outside, but you may ultimately have fiduciary responsibility for those. And that's the kind of information that is being sought here. You might have the church 401k plan. And then under type of plan, you'll see there's a list here. I think 401k is a defined contributions plan, so we'll put DC there. And plan documents, you should have plan documents that tell you the asset values, contributions, how many people participate, and you put all that information in here. If you have more than just a 401k plan, then you would put that additional information here. I think the conference may handle the retirement plans for the clergy. So my understanding is you wouldn't need to put that information in here, but if you have any other type of plan like that, where you are managing or responsible for finding someone to manage this kind of money, then that's the information we're looking for here. And there are some questions related to that, like the rest of these, and then required attachments, plan documents, and I think the 5500 is the typical document that is filed with this type of plan. They'll be looking for information about who's your CPA, who's your attorney, and if you don't know who your actuary is, just type in unknown. And if you have someone that handles that 401k and is an investment advisor for you, you can put that in here as well. All right, I'll move to the professional liability. Again, the basic information is pre-filled. And professional liability, this is again, fill in the blue. Does your organization complete any of the following? Select all that apply. You require all staff to complete employment applications. If that's correct, yes. Conduct personal interview, yes. Do you verify employment? Do you run motor vehicle records? All of the different things. What is the turnover rate for staff? This is just another way of asking some of the same questions that a different underwriter wanted on the employment practices page. But the turnover would be calculated by the number of departures during a year divided by the total number of employees. So if you had 4 employees and 2 of them left in the middle of the year and you replace them during the year, that would be 50% turnover. If you have 4 employees and you have had to replace all 4 of those employees twice, then you might have 200% turnover. That's what underwriters are looking for here. Generally, high turnover is something that'll flag underwriters' attention because it suggests a work environment that causes people to want to leave, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Andre,
Yes.
Jeff has his hand raised.
Yes, sir.
So we have full-time employees, and then we have a large number of part-time employees that may help with music programs and this stuff, and they may only have 4 hours a week. And sometimes people say, my boat is filled up, you know, I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm going to step out, and they would either grab another person. That's considered turnover, or is this strictly around full-time employees? Because you'll have a lot of not volunteer, but people who are notionally paid hourly for small quantities of time. How do we address that?
Yeah, I use your best judgment. In the example you provided, I would not include those volunteers. I would not include the volunteers in the example you gave. Certainly the full-time employees, you want to count. I can't think of it at the moment, but there may be some volunteers. Well, I wouldn't include volunteers, but part-time paid people who it's maybe a custodian who's part-time, but a salaried regular employee. I would count that type of position, but if it's someone who periodically assists with music on Sunday, maybe not every Sunday, and they've only done it for 6 months, and then they decide it's not part of their, it's not what they're called to do, or maybe school starts and they had to move away. I wouldn't count that kind of turnover as for this.
Thank you.
Yes. Let's see. Does your organization refer clients to specialists when suitable? So this would be if someone came to the church with a problem that was outside of the scope of what any of the clergy, or if you had contracted counselors or paid counselors or employed counselors outside the scope of what they're capable of addressing. That's what that would be. And then we get into some of do you currently have a professional liability policy? Is it occurrence or claims made? Retroactive date, who's the insurance company, the policy number, and then we get into professional staffing. And some of this stuff, I would guess that the underwriters who created this, who are church experts, have at some point or another had acupuncturists providing services in their church. And some of you may have it. It just it's not something that I would expect to see in a church. But if you have that, how many full-time employees, volunteers, or contractors, full-time, part-time, volunteers, or contractors, do you have? Okay, a good example would be daycare workers. So, you might have 15 people in your daycare, and you might have some part-time. Some of the mothers might participate. You may have some volunteers, and you may even have some contractors. But a lot of these just won't apply. And so just leave it at 0. If you don't have a lifeguard, if you don't have a nurse practitioner, et cetera, or phlebotomist, this is daycare workers, probably the most likely. But you might have a psychologist, you might have a psychiatrist, you might have a social worker, and you may have a teacher. Okay, if you're providing some type of after-school tutoring in your church. So underwriters are looking for that kind of detail. And then there's some other information about that information that's being requested. This gets to be a little bit lengthy. They're asking for information about the accreditation of the organization, if there is such, there's accreditation for whatever it is that you're doing. I'm sure the acupuncturists have some type of license or accreditation that's required. But that's an overview of the professional liability application. All right, sexual misconduct. I'll tell you, we went to several underwriters, and we explained what we were doing, asked them some details about their individual applications. We're trying to reduce the amount of information that we have to request. And while some said, well, this might be nice to have, or this is mandatory, they all said you absolutely have to provide to us the information we're requesting for the abuse and molestation or sexual misconduct application. So I'll bring that to your attention, and I think for obvious reasons, and it's just been, it's been an issue that's gotten a lot of attention in the past few years, particularly with regard to religious organizations and schools. So some of these underwriters also insure schools. And again, this is where having claims made coverage is particularly concerning to underwriters because, just to give you an example, in the state of Louisiana, the state opened up the statute of limitations where there may have been a statute of limitations of 5 years, meaning that someone who was a victim of sexual misconduct had 5 years to bring legal action, and after which period of time the case would be called prescribed, and there was no legal opportunity to bring a case against someone. In Louisiana, the statute of limitations laws regarding sexual misconduct have been changed so that people from a long time ago who have been abused a long time ago can bring claims against their perpetrators. And so this has created an issue for underwriters, and they're really keen on determining whether or not there's a reason to believe a claim may come forward. If there is, that it was reported previously on some other policy, and that your church and in this case the conference and the churches in the conference are doing everything they can to mitigate or reduce the chance of having this type of claim. So we need this information. There's quite a few questions about this. Again, the claims made or occurrence type policy, retroactive dates. I had a question from someone on an email about this trigger, and that's really about your prior coverage. So is your current coverage occurrence or claims made is really what they want to know. This prior coverage question, I think, is out of place, except, well, no, I'm sorry. I remember now. So yeah, do you have prior coverage? So this has become a question because in some cases, underwriters have canceled coverage, and there may be some churches or schools out there that were not able to get coverage. So do you currently have coverage, or is there prior coverage in place? Yes or no. Is it occurrence or claims made? Sorry, I had forgotten how we got past this question. And then the entry date. This one's particularly unusual, but it's a recent question. The entry date into uninterrupted claims made coverage. So the underwriters want to know, how long have you had coverage on a claims made basis? So if your retroactive date is, let's say, January 1 of 1999, and you have had coverage every year at January 1 since then your entry date into uninterrupted claims made coverage would be January 1, 1999. If, however, you purchased this coverage in January of 1999 and you went 20 years to 2019 with this coverage, and then for some reason your coverage was canceled and you went a year or even 6 months without coverage, then your entry date into uninterrupted claims made coverage would be sometime later. It wouldn't be back on the first original date that you bought the claims made coverage for this peril. I hope that was easy enough to understand and why it's important. Okay. Underwriters want to see a copy of your sexual abuse, molestation, misconduct policies and guidelines, and then they'll ask you several questions about what's in there, how you police it, how you monitor it, and how you go about training your people, training your volunteers, whether or not you let multiple adults work with, and word client would be in the case of the daycare, or your youth organization would be the youth or the children. Screening methods, a lot of questions about that. And then again, claims made information. Is there anything that's pending? Are there any incidents that might give rise to a claim that you know about? Those are all standard claims made coverage questions. Okay, and so at the end of each of these workbooks, you should see the claim information page, where for any of these coverages, we're looking for any claims that might have been made, the insurance company claim number, the date that the claim was made, whether this claim is opened or closed, and how much money may have been paid out. This information typically comes from what's called, and there's information up here to help you, what's typically called a loss run. That is the source document for the information that we're looking for here. Underwriters not only want this information, but they want a copy of the source document. It's pretty common for all underwriters and all coverages. And we're looking for claims going back at least 5 years. To get a loss run, you'll have to reach out to your current insurance agent or whomever may have been the insurance agent on your prior policies. We have a suggestion here about the language to use in an email to your current agent. Please provide us with current, this is wrong, it shouldn't read automobile insurance, but whatever insurance we're looking for, liability, or if you've had the same agent for a long time, you might just say, please provide us with the current loss runs for all of the insurance policies that we've had for each of our insurance companies for the current policy year and for each of the policies covering our church for the prior 5 years. So just a hint on how to ask. You will need help from the agents. Said this before, I'll say it again. I'm in a competitive business. If we are successful in placing insurance for the conference and you choose to join the conference's insurance plan, then you'll stop doing business with the agent that's placing your insurance now. You should be sensitive to that and recognize this could result in a loss of business for him or her. The source document's very important. It is going to be a document that has the name of the insurance company, even if you have had no claims. Underwriters want to see the source document with the policy number and the effective dates of the policy with a report that says no losses, or there have been no losses reported to this policy, or no claims, or none, or something like that. So the source document's very, very important.
Andre, We have a
Yes.
question very relevant to what you're saying. Sydney is asking, all we have on our loss runs report is the paid losses. In which column do we put the amount paid?
So, well, you would put that in the, you'd put that in the total amount incurred, probably, if your claims are closed, then you would typically only see paid amounts. I'm wondering if that's why you only have paid amounts on this particular loss run. If the claim is open, there would typically be some reserve amounts. But if you only have a paid amount, then I would put that total amount in the total occurred.
Andre, Sydney rather, I'm sorry, just responded, yes, all are closed.
Yeah. So just put it in the total total incurred. The claim status you'll select is closed, and just put that amount in the total incurred. If it's an open claim, you should find that there's going to be a breakout and there's more information to be included. If the format on your particular loss run doesn't meet what we're requiring here or on any of the other coverages, then put to the best of your ability the information in the description box. And again, if you provide the source document, then we'll be able to clear up any discrepancies that we have with the source document. Okay, I'm going to set this aside. That again was the claims made liability. I'm going to go now to talk about workers' compensation. That's a separate workbook. And as with the, let me just run down to the bottom here for step 2. So once we completed that application, the one we just went through, you're going to want to send it to us at TACUMC@McGriff.com. TACUMC@McGriff.com. We had a question previously, should you send these one at a time? If you can send them all at once, that would be easier for us. But if your system won't allow you to send that much information in a single email, you can certainly break it up. But what we would hope is that we would see from you all 6 of the completed applications in one email back to us, with those applications having been named as we talked about earlier. Then the claim information, those source documents we're talking about, please send those in a separate email, attached to a separate email to the same email address. And just type in your church name, TAC claim information as the subject there. Again, this information is all in the email that was sent to you with these workbooks from Will Reed. All right, this is the workers' compensation application. Workers' compensation is regulated a little bit differently than some of the other insurance coverages. There's a good bit of detail. We've provided a good bit of instruction in here on how to fill these out. And again, that's going to be in the first page of the workbook. There's only 3 tabs in this application, the workers' compensation application. You will fill in the St. James. Bear with me. I need to enable editing. And then we'll fill in the information as we did before. St. James, UMC, 123, Maine, Beaumont. And again, the church website, the district, the contact phone number, contact email. The fact is that for workers' compensation, one of the reasons we broke out workers' compensation and broke out these applications first, there's a lot of information, and it's just easier to deal with a lot of information if you break it down into pieces. But for workers' compensation, it's very likely, it's possible that a different underwriter will insure you for workers' compensation than insures you for some of these other coverages. And so we need to be able to separate and send only the workers' compensation information if it's going to be that line written separately for the entire conference. Years of operation, NCCI risk identification number. Some of these workbooks, you've got some helpful hints where you see this little red flag. That means that there is a note, and this tells you where you might be able to find your risk ID number. It might be on your policy. It might be on what's called an experience modification worksheet. An experience modification is used to factor in, I guess, the relative safety based on historical claims of your organization, based on the experience of other churches that the rating agency follows. Some churches, and we have some information about that under the instructions. The experience rating and the experience rating modification worksheet. You may not have this if your policy premium is less than, I think the threshold is $5,000. If you don't pay at least $5,000 for workers' compensation, and there's a couple of other factors, then you may not have an experience modification worksheet. But if you do have an experience modification and an experience modification worksheet, we've got a picture of what it looks like here, where it comes from, and how you can get it if you don't have it. Again, something that your current agent should be able to provide if you in fact have one. But that's one of the places where this NCCI risk ID might show up. The federal ID is required. This is going to be a duplication of information from the property and from one of the general liability applications. Let's say that you have that you have two locations. One is where your church is, and another is a couple blocks away where your daycare is. And so let's say 123 Main Street is where the church and the administration building is in Beaumont, and that you have on 456 Other Street in Beaumont, you might have your daycare. Okay. So what the underwriters are wanting to find out is how many employees and what kind of workers do you have at each of your locations. And so when we get down here, we want the effective date. This should be the effective date of your current policy, or the expiration date actually of your current policy. This is what the normal effective date would be of your next policy. And then the expiration date of your current policy. Some of this, again, is grayed out. You don't need to be concerned with this. If you have a deductible on your current policy, in Texas, it's either going to be medical or indemnity. There's a chance it could be something else. If it is, you click other. That information should all be on your current policy. And the deductible amount, if you don't have a deductible, it's going to be $0. If you do have a deductible, then that information should be on there. These other coverages, they should all be no, really, for you. And there's information about what each one of these things means. This, again, is the standard workers' compensation application. We're using it because most of the workers' compensation insurance companies require the industry standard application. But if you don't have people working offshore or dockside or on in a foreign country, then you really don't. There's going to be no for you on these things. Probably don't have a dividend plan. It would be on the declarations page of your policy if you do. Again, who are the contacts? If the insurance company wants to make an inspection, has a question about your payrolls, or a claim adjuster wants to contact someone in your organization, it might be the same person, but please put that information in here. And then using the example above, we had 2 locations, the main sanctuary and the administrative building, location 1, then daycare at location 2. Down here, we'd say, well, in location 1, there's really 3 different types of workers, 3 different classifications of workers, and these are the classification codes. These are the descriptions. And this information should appear on the insurance policy that you have now. At location 1, at the main location, we might have 2 clergy and 2, maybe 1 administrator and 1 part-time administrator. So let's say there's 3 people in full-time and 1 part-time at that location. And then what is the total payroll for all of the people at that location? All right, let me back up. So let's say that we have 2 clergy. I'm going to correct myself. We should have 2 here for clergy. That's going to be professional employees. Nobody part-time, but then religious organization, all other employees. We've got 1 administrator full-time and 1 part-time. And let's say, and then, the payroll, 120,000. I don't know what it is. Let's say 40,000 here. And then at location, and this would be location 1, and then at location 2 is where our child care employees are. So location 2, it's child care center. This is the classification code for those people. We may have 10 full-time, and maybe we have 2 part-time, whatever the correct number is. And then what is the payroll for those for all of that? I don't know, but that's how you fill this part of it out. Let me stop, drink a little water, and see if there are any questions at this point.
We have a daycare center that is on our campus at our church. Do we consider that all one location?
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. And where do we put custodians? Which category would custodians fit in?
That would be religious organization, all other employees.
Thank you.
And below that, we have the prior carrier information, the insurance company, what year. So if you have a policy that incepted earlier this year, 24-25 premium. If you have an experience modification, you would put that in here. Many of you don't. If you don't, it should be 1.0. But if you leave it at 0.0, we'll know what that means. How many claims were on that policy, how much was paid, and if there's any outstanding reserve amounts. That's what the underwriters are looking for here. This is the sort of the summary for each of the policies of total claims. This is not the claim data that we'll talk about on the next page, but that's an additional place where underwriters are looking for claims totals by previous policy. The standard application is going to have a number of things that don't apply. If they do, certainly check yes, but do you lease any aircraft or watercraft? No. Do you have any past or present operations involving the treatment of hazardous materials? No. Any work performed above ground or underground or above 15 feet? The choir loft is not it's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about people working off of scaffolds, and so several things that don't apply here. Employees under 16 or over 60 years old. Yeah, if you have some of those, you just come down here and put, our senior pastor is 62 years old, or thereabouts. Our church secretary is 70 years old, and we may have some youth who help with the music system during on a voluntary basis during some of our services. Just explain that in there. Do employees travel out of state? Our church has a youth mission trip and an adult mission trip that's led by staff every year. The youth don't go out of the youth go out of state. The adults sometimes go out of the country. So that's where you can put this type of information. Some other standard questions. And then this is a supplemental application that one of the underwriters in particular wants their information presented in this fashion. Number of employees, part-time, full-time. Do you use written applications? Yes, no. Criminal background checks, motor vehicle records, et cetera, Do you have personal security personnel on staff? If they're not employed, then the answer is no. Are they armed? This is an example where we have not given you the opportunity to select not applicable. So just leave that as select right there, because you don't have any employed personnel. Whether they're armed or not is really not applicable. And then mission trips, just information about what kind of mission trips you have, how many that you have planned for the upcoming year. This particular underwriter is looking for that information there.
Andre?
Yes.
We have a question, but first I apologize. I realized I was not on mute and I was typing. Thomas is asking, do you have special instructions for churches that do not have workers' comp insurance?
Well, so Thomas might have been the one who asked this question, I think in the text, but somebody had asked me. So in Texas, well, in most states, if you employ someone, you are obligated, and that person is injured while they are in your employ, you are obligated to provide all of the medical attention that they need to get well, and a portion of their lost wages while they are out of work if they were injured in the course and scope of the work for you. Most states require every employer to show evidence that they have a workers' compensation policy in force, or that they have the financial wherewithal to self-insure. In Texas, employers can elect they can elect out of this system, and if they do, they might not have they wouldn't have a workers' compensation insurance policy. There are some other that doesn't mean they wouldn't be liable. It's just that the state is not going to require them to either have a workers' compensation insurance policy or demonstrate financial responsibility. If you look at the minimum insurance requirements that the United Methodist Church puts out, I believe it says that you should have what the statutes in your state require. And the argument can be made that the statutes do not require a Texas employer to have workers' compensation insurance. So that's a long answer, but if you don't have it, then we would still like to collect that information. Our recommendation is, even if you're a church, that you should carry workers' compensation insurance. That's our recommendation. I would expect that the conference would probably want to carry workers' compensation insurance instead of electing to go without it. But if you plan to,
I was just really asking about, as far as filling out the form goes, and if you don't have prior compensation, the form kind of assumes you do have it.
Yes.
And my real question was really, is there anything in the form or about the form that, or you just need a note to the side saying that we don't currently, or whatever? I didn't mean that
Yeah.
wouldn't fill out the information on the employees or anything, but is there anything in the form that?
I don't think this form contemplates non-subscription.
Right.
So great question. You should probably put that. I'd put that in the cover note on your email when you send it, when you
Okay.
send this in. That's what I would do.
Okay. Yeah, that was really what I was asking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry for rambling.
No, that's okay. Thank you very much.
Andre, we have another question from Joe. He's asking, what about contractors?
So there is and so tell me about contractors. What are these contractors doing?
Joe, if you're speaking, you're muted.
Okay, now then, contractors are at will and do various things, mow the grass on occasions, play the piano on occasions, that kind of stuff.
So yeah, so those are two perfect examples. So if someone comes to mow, and you're talking about to mow the grass at your church,
Right.
yeah. So providing or cutting the grass, that's something that they are doing for you. It's not something that you endeavor to do for someone else. It's not part of your mission. On the other hand, playing music during the service, that's part of the service that you're providing. And so that is something that the church endeavors to do. So that type of contractor should be recognized on this form. So if you look at, I'm going to go back to the work comp application, and I think it's question 58. Are subcontractors used? You would say yes, and give the percentage of the work that is subcontracted. Well, if it's only somebody that plays the piano occasionally in a Sunday service, I would think, my guess, just from my own experience in church, be 5% or less is the work that's subcontracted. But you would be a better judge of that. Is any work subcontracted without a certificate of insurance? Well, I'm guessing that person that comes to play the piano is not insured for any liability they might cause when they come to your premises to play the piano. So the fact would be no. You would just say no, that contractor's not providing that. Yep, go ahead.
Sorry, we have a business manager that is that's a contractor. He's not an employee.
Okay.
He does all our bookkeeping.
So that I don't want to belittle his professionalism, but he, in this regard, he would be like the guy who mows the grass. Okay, he is providing a service to you. He is not part of the mission of your church. He's not doing something that you endeavor to do for your clients or for your customers or for your members. The guy who's cutting your grass he's getting paid to do something for you, not for really the people you serve. I mean, we could say, well, yeah, he's cutting
Okay.
grass and the church belongs to all of us, but that's the distinction is the contractor providing something that you endeavor to provide.
Okay, do I answer no to that then?
If that's the only person that is a contractor, then it would be no for you.
Okay.
Now let's say you hire somebody to run your daycare, not an employee, but maybe you have a contractor that comes and does that. Now that's a service that you're providing. That is you would say yes for that. Trying to think of another example.
I have a
Let's say,
clarification question
I'm sorry, say it again.
about this. I have a clarification question for
Yes.
her.
Yes.
Does this business manager also manage the books of other businesses? Or does he
Yes.
only manage yours?
No, he has other clients also.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
that's helpful as well. So that,
And
same with
we do have a daycare provider who has another job elsewhere. And part of the question I needed to ask too was what makes somebody part-time? Is it 32 hours a week or less?
I don't know what the definition is for the Department of Labor in Texas, but I'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay.
It's going to be. Let me reach out to the Texas Workforce Commission and find out what they consider part-time,
Okay.
and we'll get that out to you.
Okay. All right. I'm from Deer Park, UMC in Deer Park in Southeast. So.
Well, thank you for participating. We'll send this out to
everybody.
I'll send it to you, but I'm going to send it out to everybody. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. But since Craig's providing services to us only, even though he might write a check to a indigent for help with their rent, he's providing services for us only.
That's
he's
yes,
not part of our service.
That's correct. Even though he might be the one writing the check, he's really it's not the same.
Yeah. He doesn't sign it. So okay.
Yeah. So somebody that comes and paints your building, mows your grass, handles your books. Those are those types of contractors are not. They're not endeavoring to provide a service that you endeavor to provide.
Okay.
I think we covered, without getting into every last individual question, I think we covered this. And then there is another request for the individual claim data, and again the source documents that show the loss runs. Something that the underwriters are going to require for each of the coverages. Are there any other questions? And listen, we have time, and I'm available even if people have to peel off. If there's questions on some of the other workbooks that we've covered, and we weren't able to record, again, we're going to be holding this webinar next week and the week after, and unless I get other direction, I'll just ask folks which workbooks they've had the most difficulty with, or which workbooks they haven't had in the webinar. Any other questions today?
Andre, it does look like Joe is typing. This may be an incoming question.
Okay.
While we're waiting, Andre, thank you very much. I appreciate all your work on this.
Well, we appreciate you participating. We hope we get enough information from enough churches to put something together.
All right. I'm going to peel off. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. Have a great day.
Andre,
Joe was
Joe's
Oh.
comment was a thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to end the recording and I'm going to now try to save it and get it to Will so he can post it. Thank you all very much.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.